This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
At the end of the day, businesses are driven by people. They will continue to be driven by people. And the more that we can help empower that, hopefully we can create a more connected and compassionate world.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Tyler Plant. Tyler has led teams for more than 20 years. He's currently the Chief Revenue Officer at Simplifive, a company dedicated to maximizing human potential. Simplifive's platform and solutions blend neuroscience, psychology, and technology to analyze a team's work styles and their affinity for different project phases in an effort to improve collaboration, team satisfaction, and to drive more sustainable results. For over 2 decades, Simplifive has helped transform teams and organizations in the healthcare, tech, biotech, pharma, and the higher education space. And I'm excited to have him on the show to learn more about how to build a more collaborative culture. So Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Really excited to be here.
It is great to meet you, and I'm excited to hear about this. We were just before we press record. You said you're combining people and technology, and that's kind of really important. And I'm really excited to hear about how these tools can help us improve collaboration. So first of all, tell us a little bit about Simplifive. What do you guys do, and what's so special about this technology that you have?
Yeah, so we believe that if we can change the way that we think about ourselves and others using Five Dynamics and the Simplified platform, it's kind of the foundation, it'll lead to a more connected and compassionate world. And we're a SaaS-based business. And as you said, we blend psychology, neuroscience, and psychology to really help people navigate the ever-changing complex dynamics socially as well as professionally with creativity, empathy, critical thinking, and confidence. And my kind of personal story with Five Dynamics is I was actually introduced to the methodology about a decade ago. I was selected as a high impact leadership cohort at a global wine company that I was working at. And it was one of those lightning in the bottle moments that helped me better understand and, most important, articulate kind of what I thought my strengths were, how I kind of moved through the world, how I liked to do work, how I preferred to communicate. But more so than kind of being a lens for me, it created a lens for actually understanding everybody else using that common language. And it really powered a lot of my success in leading teams and really becoming and kind of growing from an individual contributor to a manager to a leader/coach. And so at the end of the day, we help organizations kind of transform their cultures to boost productivity, foster more satisfaction and increase morale, and create more, and I think this is the key, sustainable growth. A lot of companies can grow, but can you repeat it? What were the causes or consequences of the growth, burnout, et cetera? And I think part of our secret sauce is really this blend of people and process, which is really what the Five Dynamics methodology is all about.
One of the things I was reading through some of the material, and it said Simplify uses, it talks about energy, and it's about energy. And explain what that means, because I have a feeling I know what it is, but tell us how energy is a big part of this.
A lot of different definitions out there. The way that we advocate kind of defining this is it's the internal power for you to focus on, engage with, and performance something over time without tiring.
Okay.
So let's kind of unpack that. So in your day today, you probably did 100 different things, different tasks that are associated with different parts of kind of the project completion cycle. So Five Dynamics, quick definitions. There's explore, there's excite, there's examine, there's execute, and there's evaluate. And each of those dynamics represents, if you think about it, different part of the project completion cycle. What's my big idea? Who do I need to influence and sell it to? What's the plan? Now let's start working. And then obviously the postmortem and the reflection. And so energy is about doing tasks within each one of those dynamics and how easy or effortless or how much effort it requires you accomplish that. So we've all learned over time to do work that we don't necessarily like to do, but we know that it actually takes quite a bit of energy to be successful at that. And so energy is really about measuring one's effort neurologically to do the tasks associated with that. And so for us, it's really important to understand that, because if you can better understand how you naturally, and these are neural pathways that were deep rooted from when you were a child, this is really important to understand how you can kind of better manage your day, collaborate with others, and really at the end of the day, work with any person, no matter how difficult or how different they are.
It's interesting. So would you say that if you're doing a task that you are naturally wired to do, it requires less energy or more energy to do that? I'm thinking based on what you're saying that it's probably less energy to do those, and it's more energy to do the things that you hate doing. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'll use my own personal profile. So I have a higher energy in both the excite and the execute dynamics. And so what that means is I could do podcasts all day long. I could meet with the public, go to speaking engagements, talk with customers. That actually fills me up. That brings me energy because it's easy for me to do just naturally. That's just kind of where my tendencies are. A lower score might be in, say, examine, where I can do analysis. I can sit down with an FP&A manager and go through Excel, but it takes a lot more effort for me to do that. I've learned to do it, but it just requires more effort. And so if you think about, and your listeners think about the types of activities that kind of fill them up or kind of deflate their bubble, those are really kind of signs of the work that you really like to do. And oftentimes our career progressions subconsciously lead us in that direction. But had the opportunity to travel around the world after college, and I met so many people that were in their 20s and 30s and 40s that were just like, I hate it, I'm out, I got to go figure something out. And a lot of them were describing some of these, kind of, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, but now I'm an actor, and these pivots in which they actually are realizing what they truly, where their strengths lie. And that's really kind of at the heart of Simplify and Five Dynamics. This is a strengths-based methodology that really helps people unlock what they're good at and shines a light on the things that we need to maybe spend a little bit more time developing skills around.
That makes a lot of sense. We're all wired differently. And I think, and of course, we're all trying to collaborate together. And,
Yep.
And so you're typically, putting people who were wired very differently in the same room trying to accomplish a task. And that's why there's often conflict, and there's often, well, you're doing it wrong. Well, that's the way I do it.
Exactly.
And so you can see a lot of, conflict that can be created. And so one of the things you say is that it's important that we recognize that people have different thinking patterns and cognitive processes. And so what I understand is this methodology helps us understand the way each of us are wired in a way that we can communicate better with each other and work better together. Is that generally what's happening here?
Yeah, and the analogy that I often will use with customers, with teams, is kind of the analogy of kind of leadership, and it's simplistic, but hopefully it makes sense. So there's a piece of rope on a table, right? The old way, and if your goal is to get the rope from kind of one side of the table to the other, the old school way is just push it, just brute force, push it to the other end of the table, but that changes the integrity of the rope. An alternative way of doing it is you pull the rope and it maintains the integrity. And so Five Dynamics is about creating pull leadership moments to where you're identifying who that person is on the other side of the table and flexing your ability of understanding what's important to them, what's going to kind of get them moving in the right direction or the direction that you need them to go in. And oftentimes that doesn't mean that I'm going to lead with my preferred way. It's going to be theirs. So a quick personal anecdote, and I got approval from my wife ahead of time to share this story, but there's a lot of personal examples of like how you and a significant other plan a vacation, shop for groceries. So this example is we're redoing our kitchen. It's time to choose countertops. And she's an energetic complement to me, meaning we have very different profiles, but when you put them together, kind of amazing things can happen. So where we are in the project is we're about to decide on countertops. And my instinct where I go first is I want to go talk to somebody. I want to go down to the shop. I want to touch the marble. I want to get the story and the provenance behind where all this stuff comes from. Her first response is, we're out of cycle on our project plan, and you know what the budget is. So without awareness, that could turn into a huge kerfuffle. But now I've known and learned, happily married for 15 years, that I need to actually acknowledge that I know what the budget is before I say, let's go talk to people. Or I'm going to Costco and I know what our budget is, so I won't, so you have to kind of understand what's important to that other person, and then just make your first couple steps towards their preferred way of thinking about something. And then it's a lot easier to kind of collaborate. It depersonalizes it in a way in which you kind of, if someone is kind of, you're trying to review a project plan and all of a sudden they come up with new ideas, you understand that they're not trying to railroad that meeting. That's just where their brain goes. That's where their energies are.
Yeah.
And when you have more awareness around that, all of a sudden it doesn't feel like a personal attack. You just know that person is doing their thing. Now, there's coaching involved that might be like, that's not the right time to bring up and start brainstorming. But it really allows you to tailor and honestly be more empathetic towards the person on the other side of the table. And I've found immense benefit from that, both personally and professionally.
What's interesting is, like I've been married a long time, 30 years, 31, 32 years this year. So, and you learn these things with a spouse over time, right? Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
the way she's wired. Okay. But
right.
a lot of times we get thrust into teams where you don't have 30 years of experience with each other.
Yeah,
So is
yep.
is it the benefit of this that you get that opportunity to sort of make everybody aware of where their energy profiles are, so that you can, so it doesn't take 30 years to build that relationship? Is that generally
Yeah.
what happens?
And or a huge, cataclysmic blowout that then ends up with a good heart to heart, but you kind of can avoid the heartache that comes before that. So absolutely. So one of the really cool things is the five dynamics starting point assessment maps your profile. It basically in 3 minutes or less is going to tell you who you are, how you like to work, collaborate. And it's a very, very high accuracy rate in terms of people going, wow, that really resonates. But the platform is really the kind of point of differentiation. And like you said, for organizations that have thousands and thousands of employees, all the news recently about layoffs, reorgs, et cetera, you're constantly working with new people. And especially in a virtual world, you don't have the time or the mechanisms to get to know them. Either the pace is too fast or just geographically it's too hard. And so our platform is basically this ecosystem of curiosity where the whole team will be in this platform and you can go explore. And if you were on our team, I could choose your profile. And while I'm not just going to learn about you, our algorithms will basically stitch our profiles together and provide insights about how we're going to work together, blind spots, watch outs, and it takes the guesswork out of kind of what intuition and time sometimes is just required. And it really accelerates kind of that kind of emotional intelligence and EQ. And as we were kind of talking at the top in terms of this age of AI and all these different kind of components, I think empathy, curiosity, soft skills have kind of gotten a bad rap over the years. And I think the preemptive word is it's soft, which doesn't often have a very solid kind of leadership foundation. But a lot of thought leaders, I think, are joining our chorus of like, no, it's about human skills, not soft skills, human skills. And the more that we can help organizations provide the tools 24/7 that our platform provides that really allow people to engage, interact, and be curious about their coworkers, it just provides people a better game plan to kind of proactively kind of move through their work and their teams, as well as a preventative in which something went wrong, they can go in and kind of find some insights that might help them reverse or reconcile that friction point.
One of the things that is fascinating about this is that you get to learn about your colleagues, right, and the preferred
Mm-hmm.
method of communication, how they're wired.
Yeah.
What happens when we start speaking another person's language? How does
Mm-hmm.
that help?
Well, let's use the analogy of a sales rep because I think that's kind of the perfect and oftentimes everybody is influencing all the time, whether it's a small idea, a big vision, small vision. We're all salespeople, whether we like it or not. But in the classic analogy of a salesperson that has a customer on the other side of the fence, without training or awareness, that sales rep is basically going to try and sell to that customer the way that they would be preferred to sell. And what I mean by that, if you think about explore, excite, examine, and execute, and you think about data points, and let's just assume that they're selling some type of software. Well, if that client or prospect is really high in explore, they need context about how this decision connects to the bigger picture and kind of strategy and all these different things. But if the rep is all about execute, they might be pushing too hard, saying, oh, no, we can implement this in 2 days, 2 days. And they're talking right past each other, right? And so really it's not about brown nosing. It's not about bending. It's about acknowledging what's most important to that other person on the other side of the fence and prioritizing that content first. It doesn't mean you're not going to get your own points in and everything else. But when you begin to speak in another person's energetic language, you are basically meeting them where they are first. And that typically makes them lean in. And then, oftentimes positive collaborations kind of come from that.
Is it that in the when you're looking at the the software, does it help you determine like which types of people work better together? Like if you were trying to assemble a
Mm,
team, that's
mm,
maybe you've got a special project has to get done. You have
sure.
to assemble a team of 5 people, and you have this tool available to you. Are you able to sort of handpick a team that may work well together?
So, a couple things. One, there's no perfect score, there's no best
Okay.
score, there's no better score. And I think part of the inclusiveness of what five dynamics is all about is all of us have all five dynamics, right? You're
Hmm.
not an introvert or an extrovert. Everybody has a combination of these energies. And the dynamics and energies and kind of the way that you kind of move through the world, it's not about competency and it's not about skill set because everybody can learn to do something well. It just takes time and kind of the tool set to do that. So we do have clients that are in the kind of biopharmaceutical space that are thinking about project sprints, and they're pulling from a whole list of consultants, and they are thinking about balancing a team, so that they have kind of a balanced approach, so that from a project completion cycle, if you had a lower, say, score on a team on Excite, they might skip over the who piece of it and forget about stakeholder communication. And they had the idea, they got the plan, they did it, but they forgot to tell the troops what they were doing. And so there are ways that we have seen partners kind of do that. But what we really try and advocate is that any person can rise to the occasion. It just takes awareness.
Hmm.
Steve Jobs, classic introvert, but he didn't come across as an introvert on stage. It took time and practice. And so really, we actually don't advocate that we use five dynamics in a recruiting standpoint, because it's not a parameter or a predictor of performance, because just because someone's either high or low in one of their quadrants doesn't mean that they haven't learned to flex down or flex up in terms of kind of what's the need and the task. So our commonly kind of recurring employee experiences that we show up with is onboarding, right? You join a new company, you're learning your team. This is a great way to accelerate that kind of, oh, I really now know what John, kind of how he thinks, how he sees. That's going to help me collaborate a lot faster, especially if I'm only seeing him as one of 12, floating heads on a Zoom call. And so again, it's not a predictor of performance, but it absolutely helps understand why things are happening a certain way, and really allows a team leader to more rapidly diagnose and, most importantly, coach. One of the things that I really leveraged this methodology for was prior to giving feedback. And so, without this tool, you're basically subjectively looking at the work. Obviously, there's objective things that are happening, but especially if there's a team that's spread across the US, this really helps provide the context for what work is or not is not happening. It just provides a richer departure point for talking about, hey, John, I know that you're kind of lower in the explore, dynamic, but I really need you to kind of figure out some ways to come up with some more ideas, because you're kind of just And again, it allows for a common language to be woven into feedback, which kind of depersonalizes a little bit more, and gets people to think a little bit more deeply about kind of what's being said.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you the companies you work for or work
Mhm.
with and you put this in place, what are some of the benefits that they've told you that it's helped them?
So I'll give two examples. One is in the healthcare space. And obviously post COVID and during COVID, I mean, talk about burnout, psychological, I mean,
Yeah.
crazy environments, right? And so we partnered with actually a large healthcare company in your neck of the woods in the North Carolina, Raleigh area. And we did a study with them around how clinical teams, so nurses, doctors, and kind of everybody in between, operated, collaboratively. And this was measured through, pre and post surveys and a number of other different quantitative measures. But what we also measured was the impact on the patient. And so when those teams were performing more in sync, they understood their own working styles. They understood, why a doctor was saying a certain thing a certain way, and it kind of provided the confidence to kind of navigate those situations. It translated to meaningful, measurable improvements in the patient outcomes.
Mm.
And so that's one example that had real life world, medical patient kind of impacts. The second is where, in fast-paced startup environments, when it's just go, 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 big idea, execute, um, burnout is 100% a consequence of that. And sometimes you throw money at it, people are, thought as more cogs in the wheel. But where we really, oftentimes are called in is two main areas. One is, hey, I've got an offsite and I really want to have a meaningful, rich moment with kind of five dynamics at the heart of it to instigate dialogue around how we're working, et cetera. But it's also reactive. The employee survey just came out. The C-suite is together. They're circling the things that are in red that went down, and specifically around collaboration. How do I feel about my manager? Psychological safety. Those are also measures that we see five dynamics contributing to in terms of positively changing the culture to where we can kind of improve a lot of employee engagement metrics across the board.
I love it. I think it's great. I mean, like I said, it's sort of like shortcutting a natural human process. I mean, we do eventually get to know people and we're real, and
Mm-hmm.
we figure out how they're wired. But if you're in a fast-paced environment like a startup situation, I do
Yeah.
not have time to learn how you prefer me to talk to you. I have got to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Yep.
think we end up getting into a lot of conflict because we're trying desperately to get things done and we're not speaking each other's language.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't understand why someone's overreacting to something. And, like, for example, when I started my company up 8 years ago, I had a perfectionist working for me, and he was my CFO, and he was very precise with everything, and I wanted to go fast and he wanted to go precise, and it was like
Yeah.
we can nearly come to blows sometimes because they're like, I've got to get this done. He's like, well, I need to
Yeah.
make sure this account matches this account, and I
Yep.
don't care about that, right? It's not going to matter if we don't get our first order. So it's
Yep.
interesting that where I can see these, and had I known his language early on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could have talked better language to each other. So it's interesting
Yeah.
that.
I mean, the way that I like to kind of say it, and again, it's kind of my own, but it's like it operationalizes and accelerates intuition and EQ.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
that's
it really,
exactly what I'm thinking.
I,
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
100% kind of gets you there faster. Now, awareness is step one. There's a whole other number of steps in order for you to be able to kind of
yeah.
react and build that into your leadership craft. But awareness, as with anything, is kind of step one. And that's really where we focus on. And a lot of our solutions and workshops and training programs and a lot of the content that we empower learning and development leaders and businesses to kind of have and use show up in a lot of different, whether it's performance reviews, onboarding, a lot of other use case, project management. Think about the example that I was giving earlier with the biotech firm. Okay, here are the 12 people on the kickball team. Let's all get them in a room. How
Yeah.
do we get them working together faster, quicker, better? And we often will come in and provide context for that. And then the platform is kind of that available resource for them afterwards. And they have 12 months of access to it. And can tinker with it as much to their delight, to help propel them off of those initial starting blocks.
One of the things that's interesting is that you say, and I think it's important to recognize that even with this tool, you still have to approach relationships with curiosity and humility, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you still have to say, I care enough to go look into the platform and to say, okay, I've got a meeting here with Tyler, and I want to see the way he's wired so that I can have a more effective meeting. You have to have that curiosity, right? So that you
Yeah.
can't get away from that. That that's still a natural thing that has to happen.
If you're not curious, you're going to get stuck. And I
Hmm.
think that, ultimately curious about the work you're doing, the business you're in, the vertical you're in, the people that you work with. If you don't have a healthy curiosity, you kind of are closed minded and not willing to be open to someone else's journey and experience. And one of your previous guests said something that totally resonated with me, which is empathy is about understanding, but it doesn't mean agreeing. And I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that's perfect because that's
Yeah.
spot on to kind of what we're talking about, which is you need to be open. Doesn't mean you have to agree. It doesn't mean you have to
Yeah.
bend. It doesn't mean you have to be brown nosed. You have to be open to understanding about someone else and where they're coming from. And so, from an equity and inclusion standpoint, and because everybody is all five dynamics, that's kind of one reason why I gravitated towards this product and all the other ones that are out there. And after 20 years, working in two large global wine companies, in a number of senior management roles, I completely pivoted because I learned that I was a lot more passionate about the people side of the business than the wine side.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's great. Like I said, it's you've said it very succinctly, and I can't very repeat it, but it's systematizing what we do eventually anyway through our
Mm-hmm.
intuition, but you're making it done, you're doing it quicker and in a way that's visual, and it's a way that can be shared, and it's transparently across the organization, so everybody has
Yeah.
access to. So that's what I love about it. Um,
Yeah.
what final message would you like to leave with our listeners about this or anything else around collaboration?
I think one of the things that we're most excited about in this kind of hype cycle of AI, is this growing chorus of thought leaders that are really talking about the importance of human skills. And even if you're able to generate a PowerPoint code copy, whatever it is, someone still has to take that output, turn around and talk to a person about it. And
Hmm.
so that they're kind of forgetting about that last mile. And I think there's been this growing chorus of that, that's really, really exciting. And I think something else that we're also really excited about, and this is kind of a personal story, but like you as a senior leader, you probably had access to executive coaching, and mentors and other leaders that kind of helped you along, but not all employees have access to that. And so we're really excited about kind of continuing our product innovation, to really help everybody feel like they have that mentor and that confidant and that coach, in their corner. And I think at the end of the day, businesses are driven by people. They will continue to be driven by people. And the more that we can help empower that, hopefully we can create a more connected and compassionate world.
Oh, that's fantastic. Again, such a great product, such a great idea, and it's such a great way to shortcut some of these processes that may take years, and we don't have time. We don't have years anymore. Everything is moving at a lightning fast pace. Uh this is fantastic. Tyler, how can our listeners find out more about you and your company?
Sure. So for Simplify and Five Dynamics, it's simply5, the number 5.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Tyler.f as in Frank.plant, no relation to Robert. I wouldn't be here if it was. But yeah, you can find me on those, online. And John, really a pleasure to meet you and to have a little bit of time to shop talk about leadership.
Absolutely. This has been fantastic. Leaders, this is a fantastic program. If you've been wondering how to improve collaboration in your team, if you've got some a little bit of conflict going on, and or maybe you're having an offsite meeting and you want to try to work it out so the next year or the next quarter you can have better results and spend more time getting things done and less time arguing about how to get things done, then this is going to be the product for you. And I highly recommend taking a look at it. We'll put links in the show notes for all of Tyler's resources, but take a look at the company, take a look at what they're offering. If you've got questions, reach out to Tyler. We've got his LinkedIn profile there. Reach out to him, say you heard him on this podcast, and ask him a question. The reason he's here is to help teach and help you learn. And so if you got questions, please reach out, because Tyler is more than willing to help you out. And let's get away from conflict. Let's get towards collaboration. And we can do that in a better way using science and using technology. So, Tyler, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing what you guys are doing. And I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.